Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to El Show Sin Fronteras. We're here together every Tuesday morning to talk about all things immigration. I'm Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, your friendly immigration lawyer, here to update you on all things immigration and answer your life questions. As a reminder, my law firm, Lincoln-Goldfinch Law, is based in Austin, Texas. We are still doing free consultations because my number one piece of advice to the immigrant community in times like these is to obtain your own information directly from a lawyer that you trust, not from elsewhere. And we want to make consultations very accessible to the community. We accept cases in all 50 states because immigration law is federal. We are a virtual law firm, so we can do appointments via Zoom, including on the weekends. We are doing removal, defense, and detained cases. That means we can do bond cases, we can do habeas cases, we can help people who have been detained get out of detention, and we are available here to help you. So feel free to put your questions here. Feel free to just DM me if you or someone you know needs a consultation, and my team is behind the scenes waiting for you for your messages so that we can get you put through and get you scheduled. So that's how you do it. Send me a DM. It's that simple, and we are available to you. Let's go ahead and get started on the news of the week. A bunch of, bad stuff, of course. The first is regarding the data sharing. We've talked a lot about this data sharing concerns in this surveillance era that we are living in. And there are starting to be lawsuits and pushback related to the data sharing that DHS is utilizing. DHS is going to other agencies like the Internal Revenue Service, like Medicare, other healthcare agencies, and they are getting our data for purposes of immigration enforcement, but they're pulling in data on U.S. citizens and immigrants alike, and they're using programs like Palantir. Palantir is this really sort of dark software company that what it does is it takes data from different sources and it connects it all, right? It puts all the puzzle pieces together in a way that massively expands the government's ability to surveil us. So it takes this massive database from the child support parental locator database, from Medicare, from IRS, from facial recognition, from Stingray. Stingray is a software that mimics cell phone towers, and it tracks our movements. From Google and Meta, it tracks our social media behavior, and they're going to these companies online. Imagine everything that Google knows about us. And the government, in many cases, is accessing that information, but it's not as if they have all this data and it's disconnected from each other. Then they use Palantir, which is very pro-Trump, right? The CEO, I think, has given over $1 million to Trump. Check me on that. The founder, Palantir is very conservative politically, very pro-Trump. And they're taking all of this data and they're weaving it all together so that the government knows everything about us. And it's really unavoidable. I just don't think there is a way to live a life in this world in which you don't have all that information about you. You file your taxes, you go out into the streets where there are automatic cameras. Have you ever seen, you'll see this in a lot of parking lots. There's these devices. They're about the size of a car. And they're weird. They're in the middle of a parking lot, and then they have this long pole with cameras at the top of it. Those are AI automatic cameras that are checking our license plates, our faces, and they're sharing and feeding all that data. So literally just by living your life out on the streets, you are being tracked. Your face is being tracked. If you have a cell phone, the pings of your locations are being tracked. If you are receiving government-funded medical care, that information is being tracked. If you have a child, you are in the child support database. It is the most extensive database in the United States about every person who is the parent of a child, where we live, where we work. They've now accessed that information too. So good luck saying you're not going to get a smart speaker in your home and keep yourself safe. It ain't like that anymore. And civil organizations and members of Congress are pushing back against this idea that the Department of Homeland Security has a right to surveil us in this way. And so we are seeing some pushback on this, but we'll see if they can actually get anywhere. The government has failed to respond to requests under the Freedom of Information Act. And so there is a watchdog organization called American Oversight that has filed a lawsuit against DHS for failing to respond to its FOIA request. And let me just take this moment. I was in a panel yesterday at Austin Community College, and I was like, does anybody know what an impact litigator is? You know, and these young people were like looking at me blankly. They don't know what impact litigators are. And I was like, impact litigators are the heroes of this era. They are the people who are out there bringing lawsuits that are stopping or at least slowing this government overreach. It is the ACLUs of the world, American Oversight, MALDEFs, CARE Coalition, all of these organizations bring lawsuits to help their plaintiffs in many cases, but really the purpose of impact litigation is to bring a lawsuit that protects everybody. It's hard work. It's brave work. These are people who are really smart litigators. They go into federal court and they fight really hard uphill battles. And all of these reports on lawsuits, oh, the Sixth Circuit ruled this way. The Supreme Court did that. Oh, a federal judge in Boston ruled this. Chicago, da-da-da. All of that is because of impact litigators. And it's important that we recognize the work that they're doing. And another thing that they often need, impact litigators, is plaintiffs. They can't just bring a lawsuit. Like, they can't just say like, oh, we're the ACLU and we're going to bring a lawsuit most of the time. Most of the time they need a plaintiff. They need an impacted party who's being harmed. And these plaintiffs often are public. Like, sometimes you can be a Jane Doe or a John Doe in a big lawsuit. Most of the time you cannot, because there's depositions and hearings, and most of the time the identity of the plaintiffs comes out. And so it is a very brave person who says, I'll be a plaintiff, I'll sign up to be a plaintiff, and they're putting themselves into the hands of the impact litigators who are out there in their heroes' capes protecting all of us. So take a moment. If you know an impact litigator in your life, give them a message of thanks. They are saving our asses right now. Next, this is good news. You want some good news? It looks like Alligator Alcatraz might be being closed. Wouldn't you know, it's kind of expensive. They're having a hard time paying the bills because when you put a detention center that holds thousands of people in a remote swamp, it costs a lot of money. And DeSantis and, Floridian lawmakers, they intentionally opened, and DHS of course, a detention center in the middle of nowhere. Why do they do that? They do that because people like me, us immigration lawyers, can't get to our clients. They do that so that they can abuse people's human rights without attorney oversight. And I know, I've known this for decades because I was involved as a student in a lawsuit in which it was revealed that the detention center that was the subject of that lawsuit was almost not opened and utilized for the purpose of detaining children because it was too close to advocates. Because it was within a driving distance from local attorneys who would come and sue. And they did. I mean, that was right. And we know that they intentionally put these private prison, human rights abusing detention centers in the middle of nowhere to keep us away, to keep us attorneys away from our clients. And it has backfired in the case of Alligator Alcatraz in the costs. So $1 million a day, guys. Over $1 million a day. And 22,000 people have gone through Alligator Alcatraz. 1,500 people today, as I speak to you, are detained there. We are spending $1 million a day to detain 1,500 people at Alligator Alcatraz. So they need to close it, and it sounds like they're going to be closing it. So there you go. That's good news. Yay for that. Oh, and more good news. This is all like obvious things that should have occurred, and so we're not really going to celebrate, obvious things, but it's a news item that is not a bad news item. The Trump administration, this is reported by Politico, has axed the fast-track training for ICE recruits. Probably a good idea. The previous training, obviously they had a vetting process, background checks, etc. They did away with those, fast-tracked those, hired a bunch of losers, put them through fast-track training that was shortened from almost 3 months down to, in many cases, 1 month. So losers with 1 month of training, given guns, put out on the street. Who's surprised about what happened? But they're rethinking that plan, that poor plan. What do you know? So now they are going back to the more extensive training after some congressional hearings about where there were sort of whistleblowers and anonymous people saying, yeah, you know what, this is really bad. So we're going back to longer training. I'm not going to say adequate training, but longer training for ICE recruits. Next, this is a story reported by Mother Jones about the case of Leonardo Garcia Benegas. He's 26 years old. He's a Florida-born U.S. citizen. This guy has been detained, y'all, 3 times in the last year by ICE because he's a construction worker. And there's videos of it, like he was thrown to the ground on a construction site, arms behind his back, like in a pile of cement, ICE agents surrounding him. And he's like, hey, my passport's in the car. And they're like, shut up. We're detaining you for hours. 3 times they've done that to this guy. The same guy. Because he works in construction, he's Latino. And he's been detained as a U.S. citizen 3 times. So he's suing. We're happy about that. He's found an attorney. I can't find the name of his attorney, but he has a lawsuit suing them for his triple detentions. Which this also reminds me of my case I've told you guys about, Brian Morales, another U.S. citizen, born in a hospital in Denver, in a work truck that was pulled over for tinted windows. He was a passenger. He was detained and deported. He's actually currently in Mexico. We have a hearing coming up on his case in a couple of weeks about his ability to come back. There'll be more on that. Stay tuned. Next news item. Oh, this is another good news, but obvious, should have already occurred. The New York Times reported on this. Judge Beryl Howell in D.C. has decided that the Department of Homeland Security has arrested people without probable cause. That they're arresting people against his orders. Beryl is a woman. Against her orders in December that they not arrest people on administrative warrants. And wouldn't you know, they've continued to do that. And so she's found that they're violating her order. And so get them, Judge Howell. You go get them. So there's your news. So I would say overall, although I just thought of the case of Kevin Gonzalez, which is another news item that wasn't on my list. I was going to say overall some, positive changes due to litigation, due to congressional pushback has occurred. And I suppose the case of Kevin Gonzalez also could be seen as, a positive ending. Not really, but Kevin was an 18-year-old U.S. citizen, a boy, who had stomach cancer, and it had spread to, it had metastasized. And his parents were detained trying to come to see him. and he was emaciated, dying. He was terminal, and he made a plea to have his parents be released from detention. And they got released, and they went and saw him, and there's videos of their reunion, and he died the next day. So he was waiting for his parents to come and see him, and they did. And that's great that they got to be there to say goodbye to him. But just all over, just a horrific situation. But I'm so glad that family got to hug him and say goodbye. Okay, let's get to your comments. Chispa de bomba, thank you for always being here. Oh, this is about Alligator Alcatraz. $1 million a day. $1 million a day, 1,500 people. The swamp is on fire right now. There's an 11,000 acre fire right by Alligator Alcatraz. So, I mean, you know, maybe the evangelicals will take this as a message from above. You know? Let's close it down, shall we? Okay, next question. Can I get a U visa if the crime happened several years ago? You betcha. Let me tell you about the U visa. The U visa is a visa for victims of crime. Many people know that it exists. If you're a victim of certain crimes in this country, you can file a police report, and if you cooperate with law enforcement, they can certify that you've been a helpful victim of a crime, and you can apply for legal status. And you get a work permit, eventually a green card. You can include a whole nuclear family. It's a really great program. The purpose of this program, by the way, is not actually to help immigrants. The purpose of this program is to help law enforcement and public safety. It's to tell immigrants, we invite you and encourage you to report crime, cooperate with investigations, be witnesses, do all the things that we need immigrants to do. That's why we have the U visa, by the way. And you absolutely can get a U visa if the crime occurred several years ago. The first step of the U visa, other than being a victim and reporting the crime, is to get a certification from the law enforcement agency that is investigating or prosecuting the crime. So that could be either the police department, the sheriff's department, even CPS, or it could be the prosecutor's office, like the county attorney or the district attorney. You can even get a certification from a judge in some cases, but you have to get a certification from someone in the law enforcement pipeline, starting from the police all the way to the judge, that says that yes, this person was a victim of a crime and they were helpful. And once you get that certification, then you apply for the U visa with immigration. And immigration has no rules about how far back the crime went. Sometimes the certifying agency, like the police agency or the prosecutor or the judge, they might have their own policy. Like, you know what, we don't certify cases that are beyond the statute of limitations. Austin Police Department had that policy for a little while. So if we can't still investigate or prosecute that crime, we're not going to certify that person. Now, there's no basis in the U visa laws for that decision. But unfortunately, the certifying agencies, the law enforcement agencies, have a ton of discretion about whether they want to certify or not. That's why if you're a victim of a crime in Austin city limits, you're probably going to get certified by APD. But if you're the victim of a crime out in Bastrop, they're not very helpful. You know, so a lot of it depends upon like where the crime occurred. And so to answer the question, can you get a U visa if the crime happened several years ago? Yes, under the law. And if it's possible that you're not going to get certified by the law enforcement agency if it was a really long time ago, depending upon their policy. But that's one of the reasons you use a lawyer, because part of what we do, we don't just like ask for the certification. I mean, with some agencies, we have regular relationship and mechanism for just requesting the certification, but we're making an argument on your behalf. We're going to the law enforcement agency and we're saying, this is our client. This is what they were a victim of. This is why they were helpful, and this is why you should certify. And then sometimes they'll kick back and they'll say like, man, we're not going to certify. That was 5 years ago. And we'll be like, no, you actually investigated, prosecuted, and deported the perpetrator of this violent assault. So you should help the victim who made all that possible. And we make an argument and we advocate. We recently had a case of two jurisdictions pointing the fingers at each other. So the victim of this crime was living in one city and reported the crime. And the police department, this was several years ago, the police department in that city was like, oh, you're talking about a crime that occurred in another city, so this isn't in our jurisdiction, so you're going to need to talk to that. We're going to forward your report, and you're going to need to talk to that other police department. Well, big surprise, that process was not seamless, in which one police department sent a report to another police department, and that other police department picked it up and took care of it. No, there was a lot of advocacy needed, like all the way up to mayors and city council, and it worked, and we got a certification. So all of that is to say, sometimes it's useful to have an attorney as your advocate on the U visa certification phase, because we like to make it happen. Okay, la mexicanita. This is in Spanish. I'll answer it in Spanish and then I'll repeat it in English. Soy inmigrante, tramité un FOIA, salió bien, sin récord recientemente, contraté un abogado de inmigración, le mandé evidencia y le confesé de un fraude que yo había hecho hace un año, pero nunca fui denunciada. El abogado me puede denunciar con servicio de inmigración o la policía para que tengan ese récord y sepan que fui yo. No puede, ese abogado no puede, porque tenemos confidencialidad con nuestros clientes. So, como abogados tenemos la regla de confidencialidad con nuestros clientes. La única razón la única situación en que tenemos que hacer un reporte es si tenemos evidencia de un delito ocurriendo o que va a ocurrir, okay? So, daño en el momento, pero en el pasado no podemos porque es parte de nuestra confidencialidad. This is a person who said, what if I've been to a lawyer and I revealed to that lawyer that I had committed fraud in the past? Can that lawyer tell that information to an agency? My answer to that question is no. Ethically, no. A lawyer cannot do that because we have confidentiality with our clients. Now, what we can't do is help perpetuate a fraud. So a lawyer who is ethical, knowing that you've lied, will never help you continue the lie. We'll usually say, sorry, can't help you do that. You're going to need to go elsewhere. But they're not going to tell anybody what you've done, because it's against our ethics. We have confidentiality. Now, we do have to report if there is danger, right? If you tell us that you are planning to go assault somebody in that or that you are, or a child is being harmed, we are mandatory reporters in those situations. But past crimes, we cannot reveal. We just can't help you perpetuate. Okay. Which one of these was first? This one? Okay. You won't believe it's due. One of my favorite things are your handles. What happened with Montserrat and Victor, the elementary school students detained with their stepmother while waiting for the school bus in San Antonio? Thank you for checking in. We have a hearing on this case tomorrow. The hearing is in San Antonio before the judge. The warden of the jail has been ordered to come to the court. So I'll let you know on Thursday what happened. The family was also ordered to come, but the judge reversed that decision because it would have been traumatic for these kiddos to be transferred from a jail to a court and back. So it's just the warden. And we'll see what happens. But that's actually a very quick turnaround. We filed the habeas for them last... Did we go to San Antonio? Was that Tuesday? Wednesday? Mm-hmm. Last Wednesday. And the judge set a hearing tomorrow, 1 week later. Pretty good. So we will know a lot more tomorrow. I'll do a video. And I'll talk about it on the Thursday show. Castillo de Bomba, oh shit, I promised you I was going to do this. I'm sorry. I do sometimes have a potty mouth. I promised you I was going to do a video on humanitarian parole, and I accidentally lied to you because I didn't do it. So recommitting to do this video for you. I'm going to put this card right here. I'm going to take it and research what's going on with that lawsuit, and I'll let you know. And then hopefully we'll tag you, or we'll send it to you on Instagram. Okay, so you have it. I'll do that for you today. Okay, Africa, you work at a senior center. This is great information. Awesome. Thank you for doing that work. Such important work to help our elderly. You know, this is something I've been thinking about lately. I'm sure we all have, like with AI and what's going to happen with jobs and all of that, and just like this world. Well, our elderly will need care. So that feels like a pretty good, solid, safe job for, you know, in my mind right now, is somebody who helps and loves on elderly people, because there's going to be more and more of them, and more people need to do it. So thank you for your work. If there's anything else you guys need to know in your center, feel free to just send me a message or post a question. I'd be happy to continue to help you guys. Next question. What is the difference between U visa and VAWA? Okay, so they're both ways to help people who are victims of abuse, but they're different. They're different programs. But in the net, a U visa is a crime victims visa that encompasses a lot of crimes, including domestic violence, where you have to make a report to law enforcement. The purpose is to help law enforcement. But your abuser can be anybody. It doesn't have to be your family. It doesn't have to be your husband. It doesn't have to be someone with legal status. Okay, that's one major difference. So you have to make a police report. Your abuser doesn't have to be your husband or your wife. Okay. VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, actually helps women and men. And this is where someone who's in a relationship with a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident who's been a victim of cruelty can apply for a green card. So this doesn't require a police report, but you do have to have a relationship with a citizen or resident. So, for example, you do have to be married legally to a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. So the marriage is required, and your abuser must be in legal status, permanent legal status. Those are the big differences. Generally, VAWA is better, it's faster, but if you're not married, let me give you some examples. If you are undocumented and your partner is undocumented and your partner is abusing you, you would have to do the U visa. So you'd have to do a police report. But if you are undocumented and your partner is a permanent resident and he just yells at you and controls you a lot, well, you're married to a permanent resident, you don't have to do a police report. So you could do VAWA. So those are the main differences. But what I would say is, if you are, bottom line, if you are a person who is undocumented, who is in the United States and is suffering violence or mistreatment in your relationship, reach out for a free consultation. We will walk through your eligibility with you. We're not going to tell anybody that we've met. We can meet virtually. We have ways of protecting our clients who are in abusive situations. We'll ask you, can we text you? Can we call you? Can we send mail to you? And we won't do what you don't want us to do. So it's safe to reach out and explore whether you qualify for something if you find yourself in that situation. Next question. Okay, this is another U visa question. What happens if the criminal case has already been closed? Can I still apply for a U visa? Definitely. You definitely can. Again, this is the same answer as before about like the length of time. Sometimes the law enforcement agency says, oh, we had to close that investigation because you weren't cooperative, and then we're not going to certify. You do have to stay cooperative, right? You have to make the report. And then if the detective calls you and wants you to come in and make a statement, you have to do that. And then if they're going into court and the prosecutor wants you to come and testify, you have to do that. You have to continue to help all along the process. So oftentimes what can happen is very common in domestic violence situations. The woman will, she's getting beat up. It's very bad. She calls the police. She makes a report. And then he threatens her. And he says, if you go I'm going to kill you. And so she stops answering the detective's phone calls. Or she says, never mind, didn't happen, just kidding. Sometimes they have enough evidence from the initial report that they can continue prosecution without the helpfulness of the victim. Like if they showed up and you were covered in bruises and bleeding and had to get medical treatment, and you made a statement on the scene that it was this guy, well, they may not need you to keep going, but sometimes they have to drop the charges, and they really don't like doing that. And so what can happen, and I've seen this happen so many times, is the initial report gets made, the detective follows up, the victim is being threatened, and she retracts her statement, and then they refuse to certify the case because they're like, well, she was a victim, but she stopped being helpful. Sometimes, and this is back to why you have a lawyer, because sometimes in those situations, we advocate and we say, here's a text message from him in which he told her he was going to harm her if she went to the police station that day. Or she couldn't continue to cooperate and keep herself and her children safe. And so you should certify this case. And sometimes we can get the cases certified even when there was a stop in cooperation. I'm not encouraging people to stop cooperating because it's hard. It's a very uphill battle to get a case certified when you haven't cooperated. I think like a lawyer for purposes of the U visa. However, this is always something important when you talk about professional advice from a lawyer, from a doctor. You are a human living a life, making decisions for yourself. The lawyer's I'm going to tell you one thing about what you should do so that you can get a U visa certification. You're a grown up living a life trying to keep yourself safe and your kids safe. You make the decision about what is better for you. And this is just something that I see often in people, like putting too much decision making into the hands of professionals. I'm off legal advice right now. I'm going off the rails right now. But when you are living a life having to make decisions, you're gathering information from experts and professionals. You got to make your own decisions. So just be informed and make your own decisions. But for purposes of the U visa, continuing to cooperate is a requirement. Next question, more U visa questions. Can the U visa lead to permanent residency? Yes, it does. It does lead to a green card. So the way that the U visa works is right now there's such a long line for the U visa. It takes years and years. So you get deferred action, a work permit that protects you. Then once your turn in line happens, you get the U visa, and that U visa is good for 4 years. But after 3 years, you can apply for a green card. And one of my favorite things about the U visa is you can waive a lot of issues. It's a humanitarian case, so you can waive entries and exits. If you've been arrested, you can waive that. So someone who can't otherwise get legal status through work or through family, but if they've been a victim of a crime, they can still get a U visa. So that's a good and nice and generous thing about the U visa, and it does lead to permanent residency. It leads to citizenship down the line. I have time for 2 more questions, okay? Next one. My stepson is about to turn 21. I am legally married to his mother here in Texas, and I would like to know what options I have. Okay, so I presume from the way that this question is phrased, that your wife, his mother, does not have legal status. Because I think if she did, you would say, my wife is a U.S. citizen or my wife is a permanent resident. But you're talking about your stepson. So I'm going to assume that your wife is undocumented, okay? Your stepson can petition for you if you got married to his mother before he turned 18. So he's 21 now. If you've been married for, more than 3 years, he can be your petitioner. Now, what matters is how you entered the country, because he's your child. So if you entered the country with a visa and you have no other issues, he can petition for you to adjust your status as your child. If you entered the country without a visa, he can petition for you, but you can't get a waiver and you can't consular process, so it's kind of not worth it under the current system. So, but if he's served in the military, he can, or if there's been violence between the two of you, him to you, you can, or if you got petitioned a long time ago under a program called 245I before 2001, you can. So there are exceptions. So this is definitely a consult with me question. Don't just take my answer here on this video and make your decision. Please reach out and DM me so that we can talk to you. Okay, next question, last question, and then I'll give you your tip of the week. I'm married to a U.S. citizen. I got married in 2017. I've had my green card since 2019. I would like to know if I can already apply for citizenship. So you have to wait 3 years, and you can apply 90 days before your third anniversary. So you don't give me months here. I don't know. You married in 2017. Oh, just kidding. Just kidding. I had a brain fart. You've had your green card since 2019. Yes, you can apply for citizenship. Now, you have to qualify otherwise. You have to speak English, and you have to have paid your taxes and not owe child support and have good moral character. If all of those things are true, you already have enough time as a permanent resident to apply for U.S. citizenship. And with that, I will take you to the action item of the week. This is something I was thinking about in this presentation that I was talking to these students at ACC about. And there's, when you talk to young people, there's always this conversation around like what you should do versus what you want to do in life as you're deciding who you're going to be. And I'm in the do what you want to do category. Like, follow your passion. Follow what lights you up. Don't worry about whether that's, professional or whether it's going to make you a doctor or etc. Just follow what you love, and then you will figure out a way to make money doing it. That is also true for civic engagement. So this is an era in which we all know that it is incumbent upon us to be involved and to be civically engaged. And we're watching our democracy be dismantled before our very eyes, and we're not going to just sit by and do nothing. But a lot of us don't want to be doctors or lawyers, right? A lot of us don't want to be out there marching, being loud on social media, putting ourselves and our bodies out there in the crosshairs. And there's this idea that that's the way you do civic engagement. And that's not true. Civic engagement is the same as following your path in life. It's deciding what uplifts you, what your talents are, what makes you feel good inside, what's going to make you feel good when you lay your head down at bed at night, what's going to make you feel excited when you wake up and open your eyes in the morning. It's the same for professional life as it is for civic engagement. If you write really awesome poems, well, write really awesome resistance poems. And go out on the street or at the farmer's market and write poems for people. If you're a really good cook, cook food for people who are in their homes and not wanting to leave because of immigration enforcement. If you're somebody like me, do a show on social media or go, do protest speeches or represent people in court. Follow your feet and your footsteps and your heart and just shift it to resistance. So the action tip of the week for you is to think about what you love, and to think about a way to turn that into a project of resistance. And you'll probably have fun. And wouldn't that be great? So, and I'd love to hear what you come up with. So feel free to DM me or let me know on the show on Thursday. So on Thursday, I will have an update on Victor's family. And on later today, Castillo de Bamba, I will have a video for you on humanitarian parole. That's all for now. Nos vemos el jueves. Thanks, guys. Bye.